gong sounds 9 times to represent the 9 color belts leading up to black belt. The sounding of the gong reminds us of Eternal Grandmaster Heng-On Lee's vision that set forth a clear path for students to progress through these ranks to black belt and beyond.
Bowing is a traditional way to demonstrate respect in Korean culture. Respect is inherent in the practice of Taekwondo. You bow to your teachers to thank them for teaching you. You bow to your students to thank them for giving you the opportunity to teach. The bowl of water represents the knowledge of the black belt student. It is only partially full because it only contains the knowledge that brought the student to this point. In other words, a person's understanding of Taekwondo is comprised of what he or she has learned through training, but that knowledge doesn't fill the black belt's bowl. The instructor then adds water to that student's bowl to symbolize the guidance provided by the instructor as the student becomes a black belt or into new black belt rank. Humility. No matter how skilled you are, there is always more to learn and more that practice can achieve. The student acknowledges this by raising his or her right hand and affirming the black belt.
Do you promise that as a black belt student of Songham Taekwondo, you will faithfully fulfill Eternal Grandmaster's vision by sacrificing yourself for the benefit of your students and juniors, by loyally demonstrating leadership in your school and your community, and by diligently training to improve your skills so that you can continue to learn, grow, and accomplish your goals?
I do, sir.
Good. Loyalty. Like ever-burning candles, the masters and instructors sacrifice themselves to guide students safely down a darkened path and shed light on what is possible in life. The candles used in the black belt ceremony represent loyalty. For just as a candle must sacrifice itself to provide light for others, so must the black belt sacrifice his or her desires to assist and set a positive example for juniors and students of Songham. Nobility. In medieval times, nobility was represented by titles like Lord and Duke. These titles were inherited. In Songham Taekwondo, all students can demonstrate the noble character, humility, self-sacrifice, and moral conduct. The student is presented with a new black belt rank, signifying his or her commitment to developing and demonstrating noble character in the doujang, at home, and in the community.
So the new black belt is especially embroidered with Sari's name and her rank. The 1 bar symbolizes first degree black belt. And then on the other end in Korean is a phrase that the student gets to choose. And the phrase that Sari chose is, "Dynamite comes in small packages."
Audio Jungle.
Honor. Honor is a quality that can never be asked for, but only guaranteed by those who see it being practiced. Students are honored by the black belt rank granted to them, which is accompanied by a framed certificate. This certificate is typically presented in class about a month after the black belt ceremony. Gratitude. No student reaches this level of proficiency unassisted, so candidates make a short speech reflecting on the meaning of this accomplishment and thanking the people who helped them to reach this rank.
The first time I entered a dojo, I was a few days old, and my father was teaching class in Martinez, California. I learned to walk on the mat that covered the floor, and started training when I was 2.5. I was too young to learn much and had a distracting fascination with the large mirrors that covered the walls. It was the long drive away from our home, and I got sick in the car, so I often missed classes and graduations. In 2020, we moved house and embarked on a journey that would eventually end at our current home in England. During this time, most of my training took part in car parks in the desert, and I disliked Taekwondo. After a lot of moving about, we ended up in England. My dad started Midsummer martial arts. However, I sometimes still refused to go to class, probably because I hadn't attended proper twice-weekly classes for a long time. Sometimes I felt like quitting, but I realized I didn't know who I'd be without Taekwondo. It was part of me, so I didn't give up. I persevered. I began to enjoy Taekwondo again. I went to demonstrations in the summer. We moved to Whitney, and I started doing XMA sword. There were still some ups and downs, but overall it was a lot better. I kept training, and now I finally got my black belt. But I wouldn't have gotten it without my family, and I'd like to thank them. I'd like to thank my dad for always having time to train with me and being the best instructor I could have hoped for. My mum for always looking after Griffin and I when my dad wasn't home in the evenings because of his teaching. And my brother for training with me. I'd also like to thank the instructors that have taught me, Mr. Bardwell and now Mr. Polychan. Now I finally got my black belt, but it isn't just about the rank. To me, being a black belt means following the life skills and doing the right thing, even if no one will know if you do or not. And it isn't the end, because there's still more ranks to get, more training to do.
Well, I first want to thank Lisa and Mike for letting us intrude on their baby shower with this ceremony today. But it's kind of appropriate that we're doing this because Sari's martial arts journey began when she was a baby. She was born 5 weeks early, and I had planned on taking some time off from work after she was born so that I could be at home with her. But because she came so early, I wasn't prepared to do that. And instead of taking time off work, I took her to work in order to give Helena a break occasionally. And so when Sari was just a few days old, I had her in a sling with a bottle of breast milk in her mouth while I taught martial arts. So she had a very early exposure to the Taekwondo school. As soon as she could crawl, she loved to crawl across the mat. And my wife would bring her to class while I was teaching sometimes so that we could have Griffin in class. My wife and all the parents at the school knew that I was very strict about discipline in the school. It was important to me that, as you've seen here, when students are in class, I want them to be able to focus. I don't like having a lot of distractions on the edge of the mat. And so my wife would show up for class and Sari would be in her arms and see me teaching and just like leap out of my wife's arms and start crawling across the mat to me. And Helena would be like frantically trying to regain her control over Sari because she was worried that I'd be upset. And then to everyone's surprise, instead of being upset, I would just pick Sari up and put her on my shoulders and continue teaching. So this is the effect she had on me and the comfort level that she had in the martial arts school. As she said, she learned how to walk on the mat. And by the time she was 2.5, we had her in class, taking classes, even though I normally start at 3 because she was eager to get going. Now, as Sari told you just now, she wasn't always excited about martial arts, and it didn't always come easily to her either. In her early classes, the first year or so, she had a very hard time focusing in class. She did great if an instructor was standing directly in front of her, but otherwise she was not following what the instructors were asking. She was often more interested in her reflection in the mirror than in what the instructors were saying. And it was difficult for her to remember the sequences, the forms that we were learning. And as she said, she didn't like to drive because we lived 30 to 40 minutes away from the martial arts school. So the only reason she did it in those early years was because Helena and I felt it was important. And this is something that I've always said to parents when they reach a point where their kids are losing interest or saying that they don't want to come to class anymore. My position has always been that the two tests of whether you should continue are, number one, once the child's in class, are they happy they were there? Do they have a good time? And number two, do you feel as a parent that your child is benefiting from the program? And so I had always told parents that, but as a parent myself, with both Griffin and then Sari, that philosophy got tested because, particularly with Sari, it wasn't always something she wanted to do. And so we were challenged to follow the instructions that we've always given other parents. The truth was, when she was in class, she enjoyed it. She felt good about it. And when she earned new ranks, she felt very proud of herself. And Helena and I both knew from the many years that I've spent teaching and the hundreds of black belts that I've trained and the thousands of kids I've taught, that it has long-term benefits. And so we wanted to help Sari get those benefits. And we pushed her, even if she didn't want to do it. During the pandemic, as Sari said, we trained in the desert, we trained in the snow, we trained in car parks. And there was one day when she was 5 years old, and Sari said to me, "The minute you tell me that I'm old enough to make my own decision, I quit." And I said, "Well, you're not there yet." So she kept going. And then somehow, a couple of years ago, something clicked. It became easier for her. She started retaining the information better. She learned the patterns more easily. She enjoyed it. She was more eager to come to class. She took on more of a leadership role in class. And once she joined Legacy Program, she became one of the first people to raise their hand every time students need to demonstrate teaching skills or demonstrate how to talk about the life skills. And so she became more and more confident and more excited about what she's achieving here, and then started setting goals and really focusing on those goals. And so she decided she's going to get her black belt by the end of 2024. She knew that she would need to do all 9 forms in order to pass her test for black belt. And I've always had a rule that if you start training as a tiger, you don't have to do all 9 forms in one testing. You can split it into 3 separate testings and do 3 forms each time. But Sari set the goal of doing all 9 in one. And she decided more than a year ago that this was her goal, and also decided that she needed to get to work on it right away because she didn't want to be struggling to learn 9 forms a month before the testing. So she's been incredibly disciplined about her training. Starting in January, she hasn't missed a single day of stretching. She's gone through all her forms regularly. And she continued to do that, not only up to the testing on Thursday night when she successfully earned her black belt, but after that I told her, you can now relax a little bit, and then we'll have a down period, and then you start training hard again for your next test. Last night when I went in to say goodnight to her, she was in her pajamas doing all her forms again. So she hasn't stopped. She's still setting new goals. She's very aware that first degree black belt is only the starting point. A lot of people see it as an end point because it's something they aspire to for so long. The black belt rank has so much kind of mythic status in our culture that you think black belt's the top. But Sari knows that the first degree black belt is the beginning. And so she's already ready to start setting new goals. We talked last night, she wants to start doing some teaching here. And so as her instructor and as her father, I'm so proud of her. And so happy that she is really setting an example for all the things that I've always taught all my kids to do. Not just my own children, but the students that I teach. Sari is a great example of all these life skills and all these values, and of the ability to really persevere and achieve your goals. So congratulations.